Okay. So you should all have this paper from the back now, right? So what is this very first question number 1 asking us? Identify the key parts of the graph. So what key parts is it asking me for?
Rate of change.
A rate of change. What's the another word for rate of change? Slope. How do I figure out the slope when I'm given a graph? Rise over run. So what points am I going to pick?
The ones you have dotted?
The ones what?
Have dots on them.
Okay. There are 2 dots on there. So you could use those 2 dots. If it doesn't give you dots, what can you use? Any point as long as it goes through a grid point, right? You don't want to use this point because can you tell me exactly what that coordinate is for that point right there? No, right? So you need to make sure that you use exact points that fall on a grid, okay? So this one does look like it gives you some points. So to help you remember how that you count your rise over run, because this is the mistake that I'm seeing. I'm still seeing people go from the origin and counting over and then the origin and counting up, whatever, to figure out your slope. That's not how you figure out your slope. Okay, your slope, you start at the leftmost point. So as you read across the page, right, just like reading a book, you're going to pick the point that you come to first. Okay, start there. Then it's like giving directions from if somebody's at the grocery store and they're trying to figure out how to get to your house, okay, then they can't just cut across the middle of a block through people's yards, right? You've got to stay on the street. So you're going to tell them, oh, my house is really close. You're just going to go up 1 block, right, and over 1 block. So what is my slope? 1 over 1, which reduces to 1. So my rate of change is just 1 in this case. Now, if I pick some different points, if I picked my x-intercept and my y-intercept, because they look like they're easy to figure out, okay, I would still have to give the same directions, okay, except for instead of up 1 over 1, I would go up, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I'm turning a corner because I'm still in my car. My car doesn't jump over to this one, right? I'm still in my car, so I got to now go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 over 6, it still reduces to 1. So it doesn't matter which points you use, your slope, once you reduce it down to its simplest form, it should be the same no matter which points you use. So what's the next thing it's asking me for?
Y-intercept.
The B, which is the y-intercept. Okay. Y-intercept. And what is my y-intercept? Where do I find it?
Where it crosses the y-axis.
Where it crosses the y-axis. So is that the one going this way or the one going up and down? The one going up and down. So this is my y-intercept. What is that coordinate?
0, 6.
0, 6. Right. Now, if it doesn't ask it for it in a coordinate, what would you say? What's your y-intercept? 6. You would just say 6, right? So what's the next thing it's asking you for? The x-intercept. Okay. Now, what's another word for my x-intercept? 0. Okay. So if it asks you for the 0 or it asks you for the x-intercept, it's asking you for the same thing. So what is my x-intercept? Negative 6, 0. Why is it negative, Noah? Because we're going backwards from the origin. Everybody following along on that? So question number 2 says, find the slope of the equation below. Well, the first thing we need to determine is what form the equation is in. What form is that equation in? The point slope form. Why is it important to know which form that it's in? So you know how to solve, so you know where to find the slope at? Because the slope is in a different place depending on which form it's in, right? So if it's in point slope form, we know that we're going to have y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. That's the format that it's in. So which letter in my format represents the slope? So, okay, so m represents the slope. So in my actual equation, what number is going to be my slope? 3. So the answer for number 2 is 3. If you answer m equals 3, I believe that Get More Math tells you it's in the wrong form. It doesn't want the m equals, it just wants the number. Okay, so if you get a pop-up window, it probably doesn't want b equals or m equals or whatever. It just wants you to answer the question. So look at problem number 3 now. What does that one tell us to do? Graph it. What form is this in? It's close to standard. What's wrong with it for us to actually say it's in standard form?
The y is negative.
That's not it. Right? Our standard form is ax plus by equals c. So how does this not match? The x and the y are in the wrong spots. Okay. So I'm just going to rewrite it with my x listed first. So negative 5x minus y equals negative 10. Because I'm not being told to put it in standard form or whatever, I don't care that my number in front of my x is negative at this point. I just needed it in the right order. Okay. So now I can use my shortcut, right? Can a chimp blow a bubble? No. What does the C over A tell me? Okay, so divide negative 10 by negative 5. What point does that give me? Or what does that information tell me? It reduces first, right? What does it reduce to? To a positive 2, right? So my C over A is telling me my x-intercept. This is the reason that the y that we use, can a chimp blow a bubble, is to help keep it in order. So the first thing, the CA, is the x-intercept. Okay? So what is the CB going to tell me? The y-intercept. And what's the negative A over B going to tell me? Now here's a way to remember it so the intercepts, notice they both use the letter C. Does my slope use the letter C? No. Okay. So, and also the C, or the C divided by A, the A is the number in front of my X, right? So that's telling me my X-intercept. The C over the B, well, B is the number in front of my Y. It's my Y-intercept. Okay. And then the other one is the slope. So the ones that have the C in them are the intercepts. And you could, and for me, I at least remember that X-intercept, this one's the X-intercept because the number came from in front of the X. And this one's my Y-intercept because the number came from in front of my Y. So that might help you relate those together. So what is my Y-intercept going to be? What's my C? -10. And what's my B? -1. Because there's not a number there, right? So it's got that invisible 1. So what's -10 over 1 reduced to? 10. So I have 2 points now, right? So I've got my X-intercept is 2. My Y-intercept is 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can't do that. So I'm going to have to figure out my alternative. What's an alternative way to graph this since I can't graph those 2 points? Mm. No, I need to figure out a way to get a second point since I can't use my Y-intercept. Well, what else can I figure out from my information? What have I not solved for yet? The slope, right? So I either need 2 points to graph a line or I need a point and the slope to graph a line, right? So since I can't plot my second point, I can figure out my slope. So what is -A going to be? So the negative in front of this A is telling me it's going to change signs. So if it's a -5, a -5 is going to be what? +5. And then my B is -1, right? So what is 5 divided by -1? -5. Now, because I know I'm just really needing this to count my rise over my run, did I need to simplify it all the way down to a whole number? No, because I'm going to have to go back and put it back in a fraction, right, to count my rise over my run. So from this point, where am I going to go if I use my slope? Up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then where?
To the left.
And then backwards 1. Okay. Now you could also, if you use this one that you simplified, then you tend to say -5 over +1, right? So in that case, we'd go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and forward 1. Do we still get a straight line no matter which 2 of those points we use? Mm-hmm. And it was asked last class if I needed to draw the arrows on it. As far as I'm concerned, if you draw your line all the way through the graph, that implies to me that it keeps going. I don't require you to put the arrows on it. If you draw me a little short, skimpy line, then yes, you have to put the arrows on it telling me that it keeps going. So it's up to you. Either draw it all the way through the graph or put the arrows on it to show me that it keeps going. Now, in Get More Math, it automatically does it for you when that you put 2 points on it, right? So what's problem number 4 asking us to do? Graph the line. Do we have enough information to do that?
Yes.
And where are we going to start?
Um,
At our X-intercept or my Y-intercept? Y-intercept. Did I plot that first point wrong? Mm-hmm. So make sure that you are graphing it correctly, right? How many of you copied me just because that's where I put it? Okay. So now what do I do from that point? Down 5, because this is my rise over my run. Okay, the rise is telling me up and down, and the run is telling me across. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then which way? To the positive 4. Now I've got 2 points. Now, if it asks us to write the equation for this line, what could we do? How could we write an equation for this line? So y equals negative 5 over 4 x plus 1. What form did you use there? Slope-intercept form. Okay. It didn't ask us to do that, but we had that information, right? So it was not a difficult process if you have that information. So look at problem number 5. What is the rate of change of the following equation? The first thing we need to identify is what? What form is it in? So we know where the m is at. So what form is it in? Slope-intercept. And you're right, that's y equals mx plus b. Okay. I just want you to relate that what it's actually called with the format. Because if it asks you to answer the question and put it in slope-intercept form, then you need to know what it's asking you for, right? So where do I find the slope in slope-intercept form? Right in front of the x, right there. So where is it going to be in my equation over here? Right in front of the x. So what is it if we don't see a number there? Negative 1. So m equals negative 1. Again, I believe in Get More Math, it just wants the number, not m equals. So number 6. Graph the following equation. What format is it in? It is in slope-intercept form, kind of, right? What's wrong with it? The mx and the b are backwards. If you recognize that, you do not have to rewrite it. You just need to recognize that your m is not this first number because that's your what? That's your b, that's your y-intercept. So what's your slope?
1 over 2.
1 over 2. So my slope is 1/2, and my b is negative 3. So where do I start when I graph? The negative 3 on my y-axis. Then where do I go? Up 1 to the right, 2. Up 1 to the right, 2. And you'll frequently recognize that I say over when I'm meaning positive, and I say back when I mean negative, when we're talking about left and right. I appreciate y'all being specific with the left and the right, though. Now, if we were asked to figure out what the x-intercept is, what would it be?
Yeah.
Positive 6. So if you were also asked to figure out the 0 or the x-intercept, it would be positive 6. 2 more. Number 7. What is the slope of the following equation? It's in standard form. Kind of, right? Again, they're trying to pull a fast one on us, aren't they? Okay. So in order for us to use ax plus buy equals c, we really just need to know that the a always goes with the x and the b always goes with the y. It doesn't matter which order it's in. You don't have to rewrite it. As long as you know that your a is going to be -2, your b is -5, and your c is also -5. So what is my shortcut for the slope? Okay, so CA is going to be my x-intercept. CB is my y-intercept. So what's my slope? -a over b. Okay, so I'm going to change the sign on my a. So it's -2. So it's actually going to be what? +2. And then my b stays the same. Can my slope simplify anymore? No, I mean, you could put the negative out front, right? But essentially, this is the same thing as -2 over 5, or either one, any of those things, right? With your negative out front, so long as there's a negative sign, it's all the same number. Lastly, the rate of change. What is the rate of change asking me?
What is the slope?
What is the slope? And my slope, my rise over my run, right, is telling me how my y's change over how my x's change. That's why it's the rate of change. That's where the term rate of change comes from, is because it's talking about how they change in respect to each other. So if I use my figure out what the difference is between my y's, I'm just figuring out how does my y change from -11 to -16. What is the change that happens? How do I get from one to the other?
-5.
I had to -5. So how my y's change? Well, they change by 5. So now how do my x's change? Well, I've got to use the same points, okay? So from 3 to 4, what happens?
+1.
+1, okay? So for me on a table, it's easier just to look at it as I go down. If you use the formula, it'll take the second one and subtract the first one and whatever. To me, in a table, it's so much easier just to say, as long as you're going the same direction on both sides, you can't go from the top one to the bottom one on this side and then go from the bottom one to the top one on that side. That doesn't work. You have to think about them in the same direction. Does that make sense? Okay. So if I think about them from top to bottom, how they change, then I have to also do top to bottom for the other side. So how does this reduce? Negative 5. Okay. So it was asked earlier today, what if this was 26 and this was 6 instead? So then if I figured out that if I used these coordinates instead, so from negative 16 to negative 26, what would happen? What would my change be right there? Minus 10. Okay. And what's my change over here from 4 to 6? As long as I'm still using this and the same two coordinates, the same two rows, okay, then it still simplifies down exactly, right? Doesn't negative 10 over 2 still equal negative 5? So just because it may not have the same pattern over here, don't confuse yourself by figuring it out all the way down. We don't really need that for the slope. We just need 2 points. Just like you only need 2 points for the line, you only need 2 points for the slope. Are there any other questions? So for the rest of the class period, you can work on your slides that we were working on yesterday and ask questions. You can work on your get more math points. There's no new assignment this week. It's all just working on trying to get your ones from the remote learning done and questions answered. That needs to go in your, so fold it and glue it in your journal.